The summer of 1875 brought the kind of heat to Wallace, Colorado territory, that made even the toughest men question their resolve to tame the West. Olivia Winters stepped off the train, clutching her small valise in one hand and her late mother's faded letter in the other, as sweat already began to trickle down her spine despite the early morning hour. The mountains loomed in the distance, beautiful and intimidating, much like the future that awaited her in this dust-blown frontier town. Olivia had come west with little more than hope and the promise of a teaching position, leaving behind whispers and pitying glances in Boston. At 23, unmarried and recently informed by a stern-faced doctor that she would never bear children, she had chosen to remake herself where no one knew her past or the emptiness she carried inside. "Miss Winters." A stern-faced woman approached, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. "I'm Mrs. Holloway, head of the school board. I trust your journey was satisfactory?" "Yes, quite," Olivia replied, attempting to brush the travel dust from her navy blue traveling dress. "Thank you for meeting me. It's my duty," the woman replied without warmth. "Your quarters are prepared above the schoolhouse. Classes begin in 1 week. I expect you'll use that time to prepare your lessons and familiarize yourself with our community standards." As they walked through the town, Olivia took in the wooden storefronts, the saloon already alive with activity despite the early hour, and the mix of rough-looking men and modestly dressed women going about their business. Wallace was larger than she'd expected, with signs of prosperity in the well-maintained buildings and busy mercantile. "That's the schoolhouse," Mrs. Holloway pointed to a whitewashed building at the edge of town. "It's not what you're accustomed to in the East, I'm sure, but it serves our needs." "It looks perfect," Olivia said, and meant it. The simple structure represented her fresh start. Mrs. Holloway left her at the small staircase that led to her quarters, handing over a key with a final warning. "Wallace may seem rough, Miss Winters, but we maintain proper standards for our teachers. Your conduct must be beyond reproach." Alone in her new home, a sparse but clean room with a bed, desk, washstand, and small cookstove, Olivia allowed herself a moment of doubt. Had she been foolish to come so far, to think that distance could heal what medicine could not? A commotion outside drew her attention to the window. A cattle drive was passing at the edge of town, with cowboys skillfully guiding the herd away from buildings. One rider in particular caught her eye, tall and broad-shouldered, controlling his spirited horse with casual expertise as he directed the other men with commanding gestures. Even from a distance, she could tell he was different from the others. Something in his posture suggested education, perhaps even refinement, despite his dusty attire and sun-darkened face. When he removed his hat to wipe his brow, she caught a glimpse of hair the color of wheat fields and felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. Olivia quickly stepped back from the window, chiding herself for staring. She had not come west for romance. She had come for purpose, for a place where her worth would not be measured by her ability to bear children. That evening, as she unpacked her meager belongings, a knock at her door startled her. Opening it cautiously, she found herself facing a young woman with bright eyes and a friendly smile. "Hello there. I'm Sophia Kingsley, the doctor's wife. I heard our new teacher had arrived, so I brought you some supper. Figured you might be too tired to cook after your journey." Olivia accepted the basket gratefully. "That's very kind of you, Mrs. Kingsley. Call me Sophia, please." "May I come in? Unless you're too exhausted for company." Olivia welcomed her inside, and over a meal of hearty stew and fresh bread, Sophia provided a more colorful introduction to Wallace than Mrs. Holloway had offered. The school children are good sorts, mostly. Some of the ranch hands' children can be a bit wild, but they're eager to learn. "Oh, and you'll want to meet Dr. Kingsley soon. He insists on knowing everyone in town in case of emergencies." "I'd like that," Olivia said, though the mention of a doctor made her tense slightly, remembering her last medical consultation. "There's a welcome social at the church this Sunday after services," Sophia continued. "Everyone will be eager to meet you." Wallace might seem rough around the edges, but there's real community here. Will the cattle drivers be staying long? Olivia asked, trying to sound merely curious. Sophia's eyes sparkled with knowing amusement. Ah, you've spotted the Irwin outfit already. They're bringing their herds to the railroad. Their ranch is about 20 miles southwest of here. Ethan Irwin runs it. Took over after his father passed 2 years ago. He's quite respected, even if he does keep to himself more than most. Ethan Irwin, Olivia repeated softly. Don't tell me Boston's sensibilities are already falling to frontier romance, Sophia teased. Olivia blushed. Certainly not. I was merely curious about the local ranchers since their children will likely be my students. Of course, Sophia replied with a poorly hidden smile. Well, you'll meet him at the social, I'm sure. The Irwins never miss a community gathering good for business relationships, you understand. After Sophia left, Olivia found herself standing by the window again, looking toward the cattle camp visible at the edge of town. The light of campfires dotted the darkness, and she wondered which one might belong to the commanding rider she had noticed earlier. Foolishness, she whispered to herself, turning away. She had a classroom to prepare and a new life to build, one that would not be defined by what she lacked. The following days passed in a flurry of activity as Olivia arranged her classroom, reviewed the available textbooks, and created lesson plans. She met several families in town, memorizing names and faces of her future students. Mrs. Holloway observed her preparations with grudging approval, though her manner remained cool and evaluating. By Sunday, Olivia had settled into a routine and felt ready to face the entire community. She dressed in her best gown, a modest blue creation with delicate embroidery at the collar, and walked to the white steepled church at the center of town. The service was simple but heartfelt, and Olivia found comfort in the familiar rhythms of worship. Afterward, the congregation moved to the adjacent meeting hall for the social. Tables laden with food lined the walls, and townspeople clustered in conversational groups while children played outside under the watchful eyes of older siblings. Miss Winters. Sophia waved her over to a group that included a kindly-looking gentleman who proved to be Dr. Kingsley. We're delighted to have an educated woman join our community, the doctor said warmly. My wife tells me you've come all the way from Boston. Yes, Olivia replied. I was teaching at a girls' academy there, but I wanted to experience the West. Brave decision, remarked another man in the group. Most Eastern folks think we're still fighting off Indian attacks daily. The Utes have been peaceful for years now, Doctor. Kingsley explained. Though relations are always complicated, the conversation flowed easily, with Olivia answering questions about her background while carefully avoiding personal details. She was just beginning to relax when a subtle shift in the room's energy drew her attention to the doorway. Ethan Irwin had arrived, flanked by two of his ranch hands. Even in proper Sunday attire, there was something untamed about him. He moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to open spaces, not confined rooms. His features were strong: a straight nose, square jaw softened somewhat by a well-trimmed beard, and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Those eyes met hers across the room, and for a moment Olivia forgot to breathe. Ah, there's Ethan, Sophia whispered. Come, let me introduce you. Before Olivia could protest, she found herself being guided across the room toward the rancher. Up close, he was even more imposing, tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. Ethan, this is our new schoolteacher, Miss Olivia Winters from Boston. Miss Winters, Ethan Irwin, owner of the Broken Arrow Ranch, Miss Winters. His voice was deep and resonant with none of the rough edges she'd heard from other cowboys. Welcome to Wallace. He extended a hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she placed her gloved fingers in his. Thank you, Mr. Irwin. I understand your cattle operation is quite significant to the area. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Some might say so. Others might say we're just stubborn fools trying to tame land that doesn't want taming. And which do you believe? The question slipped out before she could consider its propriety. His eyes, a clear, startling blue, regarded her with new interest. "I believe there's a difference between taming something and working in harmony with it. The land has its own wisdom." Their exchange was interrupted by Mrs. Holloway, who appeared at Olivia's elbow. "Miss Winters, there are several parents who wish to meet you." With a polite nod to Ethan, Olivia allowed herself to be led away, though she remained acutely aware of his presence throughout the afternoon. Occasionally, she would glance up to find him watching her, his expression unreadable. As the social wound down, Olivia helped clear away dishes and was carrying a stack of plates to the church kitchen when a deep voice behind her made her start. "May I assist you with those, Miss Winters?" She turned to find Ethan Irwin, his sleeves already rolled up. "I can manage, but thank you, Mr. Irwin." "I insist," he said, taking the stack from her hands. "My mother would have my hide if she saw me letting a lady struggle with such a load." In the kitchen, they worked side by side, washing and drying dishes in a comfortable rhythm that required few words. "You've traveled a long way from home," he commented as they neared the end of their task. "Wallace is my home now," she replied, not looking up from the plate she was drying. "May I ask what brought you west? Most Eastern ladies aren't eager to trade comforts for frontier life." Olivia hesitated. "I wanted purpose, a place where I could be of use." And Boston offered no purpose, Boston offered expectations I could not fulfill. The words came out more bitter than she'd intended. Ethan regarded her thoughtfully. "The West is good for new beginnings. The land doesn't care what you were before, only what you're willing to give to it now." Before she could respond, Mrs. Holloway appeared in the doorway. "Miss Winters, it's hardly appropriate for you to be alone with." Her disapproving gaze fell on Ethan. "We were just finishing the dishes, madam," Ethan said smoothly, hanging the dish towel on its hook. "I'll take my leave. Good day, Miss Winters, Mrs. Holloway." He nodded to both women and departed. "Miss Winters," Mrs. Holloway began sternly once they were alone, "while Mr. Irwin is a respected rancher, you must be mindful of your position. A schoolteacher must maintain the highest standards of propriety." "We were washing dishes in a church kitchen, Mrs. Holloway," Olivia replied evenly. "I hardly think that constitutes impropriety." The older woman's lips thinned. "Just remember that the children of Wallace look to you as an example. Your behavior reflects on all of us." That night, as Olivia prepared for bed, she found herself replaying her brief interactions with Ethan Irwin. There had been something in his manner, a quiet understanding, perhaps, that had made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced before. It was unsettling and yet oddly comforting. "Foolishness," she whispered again to the empty room. She had not come west for romance, especially not with a man who would surely want children someday. The thought brought a familiar ache to her chest. What man would want a barren wife when the West was built on the promise of legacy? School began the following morning, with 28 students ranging from 6 to 16 years of age. Olivia quickly established herself as firm but fair, earning the children's respect through her genuine interest in their progress. The oldest students, particularly the boys who would soon leave education for ranch work, initially tested her authority, but her knowledge and patient persistence won them over. Among her students was 12-year-old Sarah Irwin, Ethan's younger sister, who had been sent to town to live with family friends during the school term. The girl was bright and eager to learn, with the same wheat-colored hair and direct blue gaze as her brother. "My brother says books are as important as riding skills," Sarah told Olivia proudly after class one day. "He reads Shakespeare and history books at night, even after working all day." "Your brother sounds like a wise man," Olivia replied, surprised by this glimpse of the rancher's private life. "He's the smartest person I know," Sarah declared loyally. "Pa wanted him to go to college back east, but then Pa got sick and Ethan had to take over the ranch, but he still studies whenever he can. He says the mind needs exercise just like the body." The information added another layer to Olivia's growing impression of Ethan Irwin. Not just a capable rancher, but an educated man who valued learning. It made their brief connection at the social seem more significant somehow. Weeks passed, and Wallace began to feel like home. Olivia established a routine of teaching during the day and reading or preparing lessons in the evening. Occasionally, she joined Sophia Kingsley and other young women from town for sewing circles or shared meals, gradually building friendships. Ethan Irwin remained at his ranch, though she heard news of him through Sarah and town gossip. The cattle had been successfully delivered to the railroad, bringing a good price. The Broken Arrow Ranch was preparing for winter, with plans to expand their operations in the spring. Olivia told herself she was merely interested as a teacher concerned for her students' family, but she couldn't deny the flutter in her chest whenever Ethan's name was mentioned. In late October, as autumn painted the surrounding hills with gold and crimson, Wallace prepared for its annual harvest festival. The entire community would gather for a day of celebration, with contests, games, a communal feast, and dancing in the evening. "You must come shopping with me for fabric," Sophia insisted during a visit to Olivia's quarters. "Every unmarried lady needs a new dress for the festival." "I'm not sure that's necessary," Olivia demurred, thinking of her limited funds. "Nonsense, it's the social event of the season." "Besides," Sophia added with a knowing smile, "Ethan Irwin always comes to town for the festival. The eligible ladies make quite an effort." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "I'm not interested in Mr. Irwin's attention." "Of course not," Sophia agreed, eyes twinkling. "But a new dress is still essential. Think of it as embracing local custom." Thus persuaded, Olivia found herself the owner of a bolt of deep green fabric that Sophia insisted matched her eyes perfectly and would make certain ranchers take notice. The week before the festival brought an unexpected visitor to Olivia's classroom. School had just dismissed for the day when a knock at the door revealed Ethan Irwin, hat in hand, looking somewhat out of place among the small desks. "Mr. Irwin," Olivia said, unable to hide her surprise. "Is everything all right with Sarah?" "Sarah's fine," he assured her. "I came to town on business and wanted to personally thank you. My sister's letters home have been full of enthusiasm for your teaching. She's learning more than she ever has before." "That's kind of you to say." "Sarah is a bright student who works hard." Ethan looked around the classroom, noting the maps Olivia had drawn herself, the carefully arranged bookshelves, and the students' work displayed on the walls. "You've done wonders with limited resources." "We make do with what we have," she replied. "Though I admit I wish we had more books. Many of the children have never read anything beyond basic primers and the Bible." "I might be able to help with that," Ethan said. "I have quite a collection at the ranch, books that are just gathering dust since my father passed." "Perhaps they could be put to better use here." Olivia's face brightened. "That would be wonderful. The children would benefit tremendously." "Consider it done, then. I'll have them brought in for the Harvest Festival." He hesitated, then added, "Will you be attending the festival, Miss Winters?" "Yes," she replied, suddenly very aware of his tall presence in the small room. "I understand it's an important tradition." "It is, the community coming together before winter sets in." He paused again. "Perhaps you might save a dance for me." The request, made with such formal courtesy, caught her off guard. Yes, I would be happy to," she found herself saying. A smile transformed his serious face. "Then I'll look forward to it. Good day, Miss Winters." After he left, Olivia sat at her desk, her heart beating faster than it should. It was just a dance, she told herself. A social courtesy. It didn't mean anything. But as she worked on her new dress in the evenings leading up to the festival, her thoughts kept returning to Ethan Irwin's smile and the way his eyes had held hers when he asked for a dance. The day of the Harvest Festival dawned clear and crisp. The town square had been transformed with decorations of autumn leaves and cornstalks, tables set up for the feast, and a wooden platform constructed for dancing. Children ran about excitedly while adults put final touches on dishes and arrangements. Olivia spent the morning helping with preparations, then returned to her quarters to change into her new dress. The deep green fabric complemented her auburn hair, which she wore partly up, with soft curls framing her face. Looking in the small mirror above her washstand, she allowed herself a moment of vanity, wondering what Ethan might think when he saw her. The festival began with games and contests, horseshoe pitching, pie eating, sack races for the children. Olivia delighted in seeing her students outside the classroom, their faces alight with joy and excitement. She joined in judging a spelling competition, cheering on participants with encouraging smiles. Late afternoon brought the communal feast, with tables groaning under the weight of roasted meats, vegetables from local gardens, and endless pies and cakes. Olivia found herself seated with Sophia and Dr. Kingsley, enjoying the comfortable conversation and sense of belonging that had been building over her months in Wallace. She was in the middle of complimenting Mrs. Peterson on her apple pie when she felt a change in the atmosphere. Looking up, she saw Ethan Irwin approaching their table, accompanied by several ranch hands pulling a cart laden with wooden crates. He nodded greeting to the group before addressing Olivia directly. "Miss Winters, I've brought those books we discussed." Excusing herself, she joined him beside the cart, gasping when she saw the contents of the opened crate. "Mr. Irwin, there must be over 100 volumes here." 117, he confirmed with quiet satisfaction. "My father was an avid collector. These have been sitting in our library gathering dust. I've kept some family favorites, but the rest should be in the hands of eager young minds." Olivia ran her fingers reverently over the spine's classics, history volumes, scientific texts, poetry collections, and novels that would open new worlds to her students. I don't know how to thank you." "Your face right now is thanks enough," he said softly. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of shared values and understanding. The moment stretched until Mrs. Holloway's voice broke the spell. "What's all this, then?" "Mr. Irwin has generously donated books for our school," Olivia explained, stepping back slightly. Mrs. Holloway examined the crates with grudging approval. "Very commendable, Mr. Irwin. The school board will certainly appreciate such generosity." "It's Miss Winters who deserves the credit," Ethan replied. "Her dedication to her students inspired the donation." As twilight approached, lanterns were lit around the square and the local fiddle players took their places on the platform. The dancing would soon begin. Olivia helped clear away dinner dishes, her awareness of Ethan's presence never diminishing even when he was across the square talking with other ranchers. The music started, and couples began to form for the first dance. Olivia watched from the sidelines, enjoying the sight of familiar faces transformed by joy and movement. She hadn't noticed Ethan's approach until he stood before her, hand extended. "I believe you promised me a dance, Miss Winters." Taking his offered hand, she allowed him to lead her onto the wooden platform. The dance was a simple one, with couples forming two lines that moved together and apart in patterns familiar to most participants. Ethan moved with surprising grace for such a large man, guiding her through the steps with gentle pressure on her hand or waist. "You dance well, Mr. Irwin," she commented as they circled each other. "My mother insisted all her children learn. She said civilization shouldn't end at the frontier." His smile held warmth and a hint of sadness. "She would have liked you, I think." "Tell me about her," Olivia encouraged. As they moved through the dance, Ethan spoke of his mother, an educated woman from St. Louis who had followed her husband west with determination and grace, who had created a home filled with books and music in the midst of wilderness, who had died of fever when he was 16, leaving him to help raise Sarah. "She taught me that strength comes in many forms," he said. "That building something lasting requires both hands and heart." When the dance ended, Ethan didn't immediately release her hand. "Would you walk with me for a moment? The night is particularly fine." Conscious of watchful eyes, especially Mrs. Holloway's, Olivia hesitated. "Perhaps just a short walk." They strolled to the edge of the square, still within sight of the festivities but removed enough for conversation. The stars were emerging in the clear sky, and a crescent moon hung low on the horizon. "I've been meaning to ask," Ethan said after a comfortable silence, "what truly brought you to Wallace? Boston to a frontier town is quite a journey for a young woman alone." Olivia looked away, focusing on the distant mountains silhouetted against the night sky. "I told you I wanted purpose." "There's more," he said gently. "I recognize the look of someone running from something. I've seen it often enough out here." Perhaps it was the darkness or the strange intimacy that had developed between them, but Olivia found herself speaking truth. In Boston, a woman's value is measured differently than here. I found myself lacking according to their standards. Lacking? His voice held disbelief. "You're educated, compassionate, clearly capable. What more could they want?" The words came reluctantly. "A woman's primary purpose there is to marry well and bear children." When it became clear I couldn't fulfill the latter, she trailed off, unable to continue. Ethan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "Then Boston's standards are foolish indeed. A person's worth isn't determined by such narrow measures." Olivia felt tears threatening and blinked them away. "That's kind of you to say. It's not kindness, Miss Winters. It's truth." He turned to face her fully. "Out here, we judge people by their actions, their character, their willingness to contribute to something larger than themselves. By those standards, you're worth more than most." His words wrapped around her heart like a warm blanket. Before she could respond, Mrs. Holloway's voice cut through the moment. "Miss Winters, your assistance is needed with the younger children." With a sigh, Olivia turned back toward the gathering. "Duty calls." Ethan nodded in understanding. "May I call on you properly sometime? Perhaps bring Sarah to visit this Sunday after church." "I would like that," she replied, surprised by how much she meant it. For the remainder of the evening, they were pulled in different directions by various obligations, but Olivia remained acutely aware of his presence. Occasionally, their eyes would meet across the square, and a silent understanding seemed to pass between them. When she finally returned to her quarters late that night, Olivia found herself standing by the window again, looking toward the road that led to the Broken Arrow Ranch, wondering what path lay ahead. Sunday came with clear skies and mild temperatures unusually pleasant for early November. After church services, Olivia returned to her quarters and changed from her Sunday best to a simpler day dress, then busied herself preparing tea for her expected visitors. The knock at her door came precisely at the agreed time. Sarah entered first, carrying a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Miss Winters, I brought you something from our garden, the last of the season's apples. Ethan says they're perfect for baking." "How thoughtful, Sarah. Thank you." Olivia accepted the gift, then welcomed Ethan, who ducked slightly to enter the small room. "I hope we're not imposing," he said, removing his hat. "Not at all. I've made tea, and there's some cake Mrs. Peterson insisted I take home from the festival." They settled around her small table, and conversation flowed easily as Sarah enthusiastically discussed school projects, and Ethan inquired about how the donated books were being received. Olivia found herself relaxing in their company, laughing more freely than she had in months. "Miss Winters," Sarah said suddenly, "would you like to visit our ranch sometime? The aspens on the hillside are still golden, and the view from our front porch is the finest in the territory." Olivia hesitated, glancing at Ethan. "That's very kind, but I was about to suggest the same thing," Ethan interrupted smoothly. "Several families are gathering at the ranch next weekend for a final outdoor supper before winter sets in. Nothing formal, just good food and company. Many of your students will be there with their parents." Put that way, it seemed a perfectly reasonable invitation. "That sounds lovely. Excellent. I'll send the wagon to fetch you Saturday morning if that suits." The following Saturday found Olivia waiting nervously outside the schoolhouse, a basket of fresh baked cookies beside her contribution to the gathering. When the wagon appeared, however, it wasn't driven by a ranch hand as she had expected, but by Ethan himself. "Good morning, Miss Winters," he called, jumping down to help her aboard. "I hope you don't mind, but I thought you might enjoy seeing some of the countryside on the way to the ranch." The journey took over 2 hours, but Olivia hardly noticed the time passing. Ethan proved to be a knowledgeable guide, pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of the area's history. He spoke of the indigenous peoples who had first inhabited the land, the early trappers and explorers, and his own family's journey west 20 years earlier. "My father had a vision of building something lasting," he explained as they traveled through a valley of exceptional beauty. He chose this land because of the year-round stream and sheltered grazing areas. He used to say the land spoke to him, told him this was where we belonged. "Do you feel the same connection?" Olivia asked. Ethan was quiet for a moment, his hands steady on the reins. "I do. It's hard to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it, but there's a rhythm to life here, a partnership between the land, the animals, and the people who tend them. When it's working right, it feels like being part of something much larger than yourself." The Broken Arrow Ranch came into view as they crested a small hill, a sprawling complex of well-maintained buildings nestled in a protected valley, with corrals, barns, and bunkhouses surrounding a large 2-story main house built of solid timber. Fields stretched in multiple directions and cattle grazed peacefully on distant hillsides. "It's beautiful," Olivia breathed. "It's home," Ethan replied simply, but the pride in his voice was unmistakable. Several wagons were already parked near the main house, and children played in the yard while adults gathered on the wide front porch. Sarah spotted them immediately and ran to greet Olivia with an enthusiastic hug. "You came. I can't wait to show you everything, the horses, my special reading spot by the creek, the view from the ridge." "Perhaps let Miss Winters catch her breath first," Ethan suggested with an indulgent smile. "She'll be here all day." The gathering was indeed informal, with families from neighboring ranches and farms joining in a communal meal served outdoors on long tables. Many were parents of Olivia's students, and she found herself drawn into conversations about children's progress and educational needs. After the meal, Sarah insisted on giving Olivia a tour of the ranch. They visited the stables, where fine horses regarded them with intelligent eyes, the kitchen garden, now mostly harvested but still yielding hearty vegetables, and finally, the main house itself. The interior surprised Olivia with its blend of frontier practicality and unexpected refinement. Sturdy, handcrafted furniture filled the rooms, but there were also delicate touches, hand-embroidered cushions, carefully preserved china, and most notably, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves in what Sarah proudly called the library. "Mother started the collection," Sarah explained. "Ethan adds to it whenever he can. He says books are windows to worlds we might never see otherwise." Olivia ran her fingers along the spines, noting titles ranging from practical manuals on animal husbandry to poetry collections and novels. "It's impressive." "This is my favorite," Sarah said, pulling down a well-worn volume of fairy tales. "Mother used to read to us from it every night." As Olivia leafed through the book, admiring the colored plates, she became aware of Ethan watching from the doorway. His expression was soft, almost vulnerable. "Sarah," he said gently, "Mrs. Thompson was asking for your help with the younger children's games." After Sarah departed, Ethan stepped into the library. "I see you've discovered our family's treasure trove. It's wonderful. I've never seen such a collection outside of Boston." My mother believed isolation from civilization didn't mean isolation from ideas. He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could sense his warmth. This room was her sanctuary and later mine. "Many nights after Father died, I sat here making decisions by lamplight, wondering if I was doing right by the land and the people who depend on it." "And were you?" Olivia asked softly. "Most of the time, I hope." His voice held a hint of uncertainty that made him seem suddenly more human, more approachable. "It's not always clear, is it, the right path?" "No," she agreed, thinking of her own journey, but I believe intention matters. Trying to do good counts for something." Ethan's eyes held hers, and she saw in them a recognition of shared understanding, of mutual respect that had been growing since their first meeting. For a moment, she thought he might say something more, might even reach for her hand, but a call from outside broke the moment. "Ethan. The horse races are about to begin." The remainder of the day passed in a whirl of activities, races, storytelling, music played by some of the ranch hands. As dusk approached, a bonfire was lit in the yard and people gathered around it, sharing tales and songs. Olivia found herself seated next to Ethan on a log bench, close enough that their shoulders occasionally touched. Under cover of the general conversation, he spoke quietly. "I'm glad you came today." "So am I," she replied honestly. "Your home is special, Ethan. I understand now why you speak of it the way you do." "It can be a hard life," he acknowledged. "Winters are long, work never really ends, and nature doesn't always cooperate with human plans. But there's something about building something with your own hands, watching it grow and flourish." He paused. "I've never tried to explain it before. It sounds rather simple when put into words." "The most important things often do," Olivia said. As the evening progressed and families began to depart, Olivia realized she wasn't ready for the day to end. Being at the ranch, surrounded by the community Ethan had helped build, had awakened something in her, a sense of possibility she hadn't felt in a long time. When only a few guests remained, Ethan approached her again. "Would you walk with me before we head back to town? There's something I'd like to show you." He led her away from the main house, along a well-worn path that wound up a gentle slope. At the top of the rise stood a lone tree, a massive oak that must have been ancient when the first settlers arrived. Beneath its spreading branches, the entire valley was visible, bathed in the silver light of the rising moon. "This is my thinking spot," Ethan said quietly. "When decisions need making or troubles need sorting, I come here. Something about the perspective helps clear the mind." Olivia understood immediately. From this vantage point, human concerns seemed both significant and small part of a larger pattern of life that had existed long before them and would continue long after. "Thank you for sharing it with me," she said. Ethan turned to face her, his expression serious in the moonlight. "Olivia," he said, using her given name for the first time, "I don't want to presume, but I've come to value your company greatly these past weeks, more than I expected, more than might be wise, perhaps." Her heart began to beat faster. "I feel the same. Do you?" His voice held wonder and a question. "Because I find myself thinking of you at odd moments, wondering what you'd think of a passage I've read or how you'd react to a particular view. It's unfamiliar to me." "I think of you too," she admitted softly. He took her hand gently, as if she were something precious and easily startled. "Would you permit me to court you properly? To see where this might lead," the question, so formally asked yet carrying such weight, brought Olivia's fears rushing back. Her hand tensed in his. "Ethan, there are things you should know, things that might change your mind." "Tell me then," he said simply. Looking out over the moonlit valley rather than at him, she spoke the truth that had driven her from Boston. "I cannot have children, the doctors are certain. If you're looking for someone to help build a legacy, to continue your family line, I cannot be that person." Her words hung in the night air, and for a moment there was only silence. Then Ethan's hand tightened around hers. "Is that all?" he asked softly, startled. She looked up at him. "Isn't that enough? Most men want sons to inherit what they've built, daughters to bring joy to their later years. Most men haven't thought very deeply about what truly matters," Ethan replied. His free hand rose to gently touch her cheek. "Olivia, legacies take many forms. The ranch is important to me, yes, but so is building a life with someone who understands me, who shares my values, who sees the world with clear eyes and an open heart." Tears blurred her vision. "They say I'm barren," she whispered, the word painful even now. "Then our hearts will be our harvest," he replied without hesitation, his voice sure and steady. "We'll nurture the land, the community, the children in your classroom. We'll build something that matters in ways that go beyond bloodlines." A sob escaped her, part relief, part lingering grief, part astonished joy at being so completely accepted. Ethan drew her close, his arms encircling her with gentle strength. "I want you as you are, Olivia Winters," he murmured against her hair. "No conditions, no expectations beyond those we create together." Under the ancient oak, with the ranch spread below them like a promise, Olivia felt something inside her shift and settle, a wound beginning to heal, a possibility beginning to grow. She raised her face to his, and when he lowered his head to kiss her, it felt like coming home. The courtship that followed was both public and private rides across the ranch lands when school was not in session, shared meals with Sarah and others, quiet conversations in Olivia's quarters or Ethan's library. They discovered shared tastes in literature and music, compatible views on education and community responsibility, and complementary strengths that made them better together than apart. Mrs. Holloway observed the developing relationship with narrow-eyed concern at first, but even she couldn't deny that Olivia's teaching remained exemplary, and Ethan's reputation as a man of integrity was well established in the community. Winter arrived with sudden ferocity in late November, blanketing Wallace and the surrounding countryside in deep snow. Travel between town and ranch became difficult, limiting Ethan and Olivia's time together, but the separation only strengthened their commitment. During one particularly brutal blizzard, Ethan surprised Olivia by appearing at her door, snow-covered and half-frozen after riding through the storm. "Ethan, you shouldn't have risked it," she scolded, pulling him inside and helping him remove his ice-encrusted coat. "I had to see you," he said simply, taking her hands in his cold ones, "and bring you this." From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. Olivia's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a delicate gold band set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "It was my mother's," Ethan explained. "She made me promise to give it only to a woman of substance who valued what truly matters in life." He knelt before her, still holding the open box. "Olivia Winters, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me at Broken Arrow, teach the children of our community, grow old with me beneath our oak tree?" Through tears of joy, Olivia nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it." They were married in the Wallace church on a clear, cold day in February 1876, with the entire community in attendance. Sarah stood proudly as Olivia's attendant, and Dr. Kingsley as Ethan's best man. Even Mrs. Holloway offered a grudging blessing, acknowledging that arrangements had been made for a new teacher to arrive in the spring. Olivia wore a gown of ivory silk that Sophia had helped her make, with lace at the collar and cuffs that had belonged to Ethan's mother. As they spoke their vows, snow began to fall outside, gentle flakes that seemed to bless their union with winter's quiet beauty. The celebration afterward was joyous and prolonged, with food and dancing continuing well into the night. When they finally departed for the ranch in a sleigh decorated with ribbons and bells, the townsfolk lined the street to wave them off. "Are you happy, Mrs. Irwin?" Ethan asked as they glided over the snow-covered road, wrapped in thick blankets against the cold. "Completely," Olivia replied, nestling against him. "Are you having any second thoughts? Only about not finding you sooner?" He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "We have a lifetime to make up for lost time." Spring came to Broken Arrow Ranch with explosive beauty wildflowers carpeting the hillsides, newborn calves testing wobbly legs in greening pastures, and birdsong filling the air from dawn to dusk. Olivia thrived in her new role as Ethan's wife and partner, dividing her time between helping manage the household and continuing to teach at a small school they established for the ranch children and those from neighboring properties. Their wedding night had revealed another shared harmony, a physical connection that grew from their deep emotional bond. In Ethan's arms, Olivia discovered passion without pressure, intimacy without expectation. Their inability to conceive children became not a shadow over their marriage, but simply a fact, like the weather or the seasons acknowledged but not defining. Instead, they poured their energy into other forms of creation. Under their joint stewardship, Broken Arrow Ranch prospered and expanded. Ethan's innovative breeding programs improved their stock, while Olivia's organizational skills brought new efficiency to their operations. Together, they experimented with crops that could thrive in the harsh climate, sharing successful techniques with neighboring ranches. The library continued to grow, becoming a resource not just for their household but for the entire community. Twice monthly, families would gather at the main house for reading evenings, where Olivia would lead discussions of shared books, or community members would take turns reading aloud from classics and new works alike. Sarah, blossoming into a thoughtful young woman under Olivia's guidance, eventually departed for a women's college in Denver, the first Irwin to pursue higher education. Her letters home were filled with excitement about new ideas and possibilities, and her visits brought fresh perspectives to the ranch. As the years passed, Olivia and Ethan's bond deepened through shared joys and sorrows. They weathered harsh winters, summer droughts, economic downturns, and the inevitable losses that come with rural life. Through it all, they remained steadfast in their commitment to each other and to the community they helped nurture. In the summer of 1880, a wagon arrived at Broken Arrow carrying an unexpected delivery: 3 children, siblings aged 4 to 10, whose parents had died of fever in a mining camp 50 miles north. The oldest boy, thin and solemn-eyed, clutched a letter addressed to Ethan. "Their father worked for me years back," Ethan explained to Olivia after reading it. "A good man. He asked that I find them a decent home, someone who would keep them together." Olivia looked at the children, exhausted, frightened, trying so hard to be brave, and felt something shift inside her. "Maybe we don't need to look very far," she said quietly. Ethan's eyes met hers, a question in them. "Are you sure? 3 all at once is a lot to take on. Our hearts will be our harvest, remember?" she replied, taking his hand. "I think maybe this is part of what you meant." The decision to adopt James, Emma, and little Thomas changed their lives in ways they couldn't have imagined. The house filled with noise and energy, challenges and laughter. Olivia discovered reserves of patience she hadn't known she possessed, while Ethan revealed a talent for storytelling that could soothe even the worst nightmares. The children, initially cautious and expecting to be sent away, gradually relaxed into the security of unconditional love. James, the oldest, became Ethan's shadow, absorbing ranching knowledge like a sponge. Emma revealed a gift for music that led to the purchase of a piano for the main house. And Thomas, the baby at 4, attached himself to Olivia with fierce devotion, following her through daily tasks and falling asleep each night to the sound of her reading voice. "You were made for motherhood," Ethan observed one evening as they watched the children playing in the yard. "Not in the way I once thought," Olivia replied, "but yes, I think perhaps I was." 2 years later, another child joined their growing family, a half-Ute girl named Lily, whose white father had abandoned her mother, who subsequently died in childbirth. The nearby Ute community, facing increasing pressure on their lands and resources, had approached Ethan as a known fair dealer, asking if he would take the child rather than see her sent to a distant government school. "She belongs nowhere and everywhere," the Ute elder had explained. "With you, perhaps she can learn to walk in both worlds." So their family grew again, creating new challenges and new joys. Lily, with her quiet ways and keen observation, brought different perspectives to the ranch. Through her, they built stronger relationships with the remaining Ute people, learning from their deep knowledge of the land and its rhythms. In return, Ethan and Olivia ensured that Lily maintained connections to her heritage, regularly visiting the Ute settlement and incorporating their stories and traditions into family life. It wasn't always easy. Prejudice existed even in their relatively open-minded community, but they faced it together. creating a home where diversity was valued rather than merely tolerated. By 1885, Broken Arrow Ranch had become known not just for its fine cattle and horses, but as a center of community life hosting gatherings, supporting neighbors in need, and pioneering educational opportunities in a region where formal schooling remained limited. Ethan and Olivia's partnership was widely respected, their marriage a model of equality unusual for the time. That autumn, as they celebrated their harvest festival under the ancient oak, now surrounded by 4 children and dozens of friends and neighbors, Ethan took Olivia's hand and led her slightly away from the festivities. "You remember the first time I brought you here?" he asked, looking out over their land as the setting sun gilded everything in golden light. "Of course," she replied. "You showed me your thinking spot and asked to court me. And you told me you were Barren," he recalled, his voice gentle. "You were so certain it would change how I felt." Olivia leaned against him, watching their children playing tag with neighboring youngsters. "I couldn't imagine then what we would build together. Nor could I," Ethan admitted. "I just knew I wanted you beside me, however our path unfolded." He turned to face her fully. "Any regrets?" "About the choice you made?" Olivia looked up at the man who had seen her value when she couldn't see it herself, who had offered partnership instead of possession, who had helped her create a life richer than any she could have imagined in Boston. "Not one," she said firmly. "Our harvest has been abundant beyond measure." As if to punctuate her words, little Thomas came running up, breathless with excitement. "Pa, Ma, come quick. James is showing everyone how to rope the way you taught him." Hand in hand, they followed their youngest son back to the gathering. The future would bring more challenges, more joys, more children in need of homes, more community building a harvest that would continue long after they were gone, seeds planted by 2 people who had recognized in each other something worth nurturing. Their legacy wouldn't be counted in bloodlines but in lives touched, land preserved, knowledge shared, and love freely given, a harvest of the heart that would feed generations to come.